Welcome to Space Setup News live stream. So I do this live stream every week at the same time, so Saturday evening or Sunday morning, depending where you're watching from. And I'm going to just recap the videos I've done this week. So I did a video on MaxSpace Tuesday, and then on Friday I did a video on Cislunar supply hubs. So I'll go through those videos. I'll bring up comments people left, and yeah, I'll answer any chat questions, which could be on any topic on space, doesn't matter. And if you're watching live, thank you. And if you're re-watching later, thank you for that. And I'll try to remember to put the chapter markers in the video so you can skip to a section. I'll skip over a section if you it doesn't interest you. So with that, let's get into the first video this week. And that is on MaxSpace inflatable habitats. 350 cubic meters on one Falcon 9 launch. And Christian's, yeah, thank you for being in the house, Christian. T-shirt in the color of NASA, royal blue, good start. Yes, I have a few color T-shirts. So here is the first video, MaxSpace. So they're working on an inflatable habitat design. So you can see it from this image here. So you've got two metal sections, both with docking adapters. One's got solar panels, the other one's got windows, and then you've got this big inflatable area, which is, as it says in the title, is 350 cubic meters. So it's quite a big amount of space. It's about a third of the size of the International Space Station, and we do have some graphics inside. This just renders, so you can see this is inside the inflatable area. So there's various workstations, there's manipulators and so on, a glove box I think that is there, and you can see from this graphic, bring it up, you can see payload lockers, and then you've got the section to the docking adapters you can see in the middle, and here you can see this is the metal area where there's some large windows. So you can look outside, take photos of the Earth, or see outside the station. So those are some of the renders we have. And so they announced, it was on the 17th of December, so just over a week ago, they announced the Thunderbird space station design, which will be in competition with the other commercial space stations for NASA CLD Awards Phase 2. So CLD is Commercial LEO Destinations, which is what NASA calls space stations. So you have Axiom Space, you have Vast Space, you have Orbital Reef, you have Starlab Space. Potentially you have SpaceX bidding again for Phase 2. They bid for Space One Awards, they didn't win. And now you'll have MaxSpace throwing in their hat into the ring. So you're going to have like five or six different companies bidding for Phase 2 awards. And NASA's made it clear they welcome all newcomers. You don't have to have been awarded anything in Phase 1. So we could have even more bids. It's completely open competition. And any company that is American or has American offices can bid. And they'll be using Space Act agreements. So they were going to switch to FAR contracts, that's Federal Acquisition Regulations. Those are very burdensome, onerous contracts that are difficult, especially for small companies. So they're not doing that anymore. They're going to continue with Space Act agreements, which are just better for space startups, more lightweight. And yeah, so we're not sure how much money they're going to be. That is one of the big issues with commercial space stations. There really isn't a lot of money, and it will be split between the winners. NASA wants at least 2, maybe 3 awards. So if you split that 2 or 3 ways, the money, it's not a lot, to be honest. So for SpaceX, it would be Starship. So Christian's saying this is SpaceX, I'll do a fit a SpaceX Falcon 9 ship loading bay. So for this one, this is any medium launch vehicle. So I think they mentioned Falcon 9. So it can expand 20 times. So when it's flat packed, I think their demo tech mission in 2027, it's called Mission Evolution. I think there's an image of it here. Here it is. So first of all, before they do the big version, they're going to put this into space. This is Mission Evolution. It's a tech demo just to make sure they can expand it and all the systems work, life support, environmental control. So this will be just 2 meters by 2 meters flat packed in its stored configuration. Fits easily into a medium launch vehicle like Falcon 9, but it will expand massively once inflated. So they're going to test it out in 2027 with this Mission Evolution demonstrator. And if all goes well, the full-size one should be ready to launch in 2029, I believe. And they can go bigger than this as well. They can go up to 1,000 cubic meters, which would be the full size of the International Space Station. So this can get very big. And obviously with the heavy launch vehicles, potentially you could launch something that has huge volume once inflated. And their ambition doesn't just stop in low Earth orbit. This render here is for our moon base. And you can see here on the image, get a little bit bigger, it looks like there's windows in the inflatable area. So I did speculate that that should be possible. But yeah, it definitely looks like at some point there will be windows. And then you have the metal area here, which I guess has the paylock and so on. And you could have multiple of those habitats on the moon. And you can have space stations around the moon, orbiting the moon, or orbiting Mars. So on the website, they do have renders showing, space stations around Mars. And Christian is saying, what happened to Bigelow original inflatable? Well, the beam module is still attached to the International Space Station. That's the Bigelow expandable activity module. It's just used for space, for storing stuff. But it proves it works. It's been around for a long time now. So the technology just does exist. You've got Sierra Space with inflatables. I think Lockheed Martin is doing inflatables. You've got Max Space as well. One interesting thing about Max Space is their inflatable technology is different from Sierra Space. Sierra Space is kind of like the basket weave, where you weave over and under. But Max Space prefers their design, which is basically very high strength cords going from the base to the top. And then you've got fabric in between that's not under load. So that should make it easier to do windows. You can cut into the area that's not load bearing because it's only the cords, which they call tendons, which are under stress. So we'll see. Anyway, they've got lots of interesting ideas, and the space station looks quite big. They can put 60 payload dockers in the design, and there's room obviously for more as well. So it seems quite spacious. You can launch it on a medium launch vehicle, and you get immediately 350 cubic meters of habitat, which is great. And it's got 2 docking adapters. If you have a look at this graphic here, you can see it's got 2 docking adapters. So you could have a visiting crew vehicle, and on the other end, you could have a cargo vehicle attached. And then you could do, crew resupply, consumables, more equipment, and so on. And Christine is saying, just to say no windows. Okay, the option to put window costs more than the rest of the whole thing. Yeah, maybe it's really difficult. I know Sierra Space has made progress with windows. I've definitely seen some videos, pressure tests, where they cut out a section for a window. So it's possible. So anyway, that is Max Space, which just announced their Thunderbird design on the 17th of December, so just over a week away, just in time for our NASA CLD Phase 2 awards, which hopefully will be coming in the first half of 2026. And we'll see which companies get awarded. Hopefully it's at least 2, maybe 3 or 4. Who knows, right? Who knows? And maybe there'll be some surprise bidders that we're not aware of. And actually, Christian says, it's much cheaper to mount camera outside and put TV inside, and then you can still see outside. And that makes a lot of sense. If you put a camera outside with a big LED mounted inside, that gives you the same view, and it's a lot easier than actually cutting into your space station for a window. I don't know whether crew will go for that. I do know they love the cupola on the International Space Station, and Axiom Space will also have something like that as well, some kind of cupola module. So anyway, I have this graphic for the advantages. So the advantages are large volume, up to 1,000 cubic meters. So the same as the International Space Station in single launch. No assembly required. Once you inflate it in orbit, you have a working space station. It's low cost, cheap and simple to manufacture according to MaxSpace. So it can actually be manufactured cheaper than the metal modules. Axiom has been working on their modules for several years now, and I think they're quite expensive, hundreds of millions of dollars to build. So MaxSpace is saying it's quite simple and cheap to manufacture. And also safety. It's 3 times NASA's safety factor in terms of the pressure tests. It can withstand a lot more temperature, a lot more pressure than it needs to. So it's very safe. And if we compare it to, I put myself here. So if we compare it to the other potential bidders that we know of, we have Vast Space with Haven 1, which should be launching in the first half of 2026, and that will have 80 cubic meters. Although I've seen figures from 45 to 80, but we'll go with the top end figure, which is 80 cubic meters. So that will be the very first commercial space station in orbit. It can support crew, up to 4 crew for 30 days. Then the Haven 2, which is the one they'll bid for the NASA awards. Not disclosed, but it's a stretched version. So it's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be bigger than Haven 1 for sure. And that will launch on a Falcon Heavy 2028. We have Axiom Space, which will eventually be bigger than MaxSpace, but their first initial habitat is probably around 150 cubic meters, something like that. And that can launch on New Glenn or Falcon Heavy 2026, which is next year. And then we have the consortium working on Starlab Space. So you've got Voyager, you've got MDA Space, you've got Mitsubishi and Airbus. This is big. This is 450 cubic meters launching on a Starship. And that's because the diameter is 8 meters. So it's a pretty big vehicle. And it's got a robotic arm and everything. So that will be a very interesting space station. They have a lot of international partnerships. So they're always announcing partnerships, Starlab with Redwire and with other companies. So Starlab is definitely interesting. And then we have Orbital Reef, which is like my least favorite space station. I don't really hear any news on social media. I don't really know what's happening with Orbital Reef. They did have issues with the Sierra Space at one point. Apparently that's fixed now. But Blue Origin has definitely had challenges with partners in the past. With the initial human landing system, the national team. Then they had Cislunar Transporter, which had Lockheed Martin, and now it's all Blue Origin. So I'm kind of, I don't know whether Orbital Reef is even going to happen. That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure. Anyway, so let's get on to the comments. Let's bring the comments up, see what people are saying. And I'll put myself in the corner here. So Marty is saying, he's talking 12 minutes, 12 minutes, 30 seconds into the video, say, MaxSpace is not the only inflatable design. Sierra Space's live habitat is also inflatable. Yes, Sierra Space does have a live habitat module, but I don't think they have any plans to launch it independently. But it is part of the Orbital Reef design. So depending on how likely you think Orbital Reef will happen, yes, you could say that's an alternative design. I kind of don't really have much faith in Orbital Reef, and I've not seen any updates in a while. But yeah, if you include Orbital Reef, which did win Phase 1 awards, yes, Sierra Space's life habitat is included in that. And then I just basically say what I just said now. And Marty says, true, though, considering how far along Sierra Space is with development, testing and construction, the life unit could be ready to go, even if it isn't first into space. I've heard rumors that talks with Axiom have taken place, but that may come to nothing. We shall see. Yeah, I've not heard those rumors, but it wouldn't surprise me because Axiom also have a agreement with Gravitics, which builds a space station modules. So not stations, but they will sell you a module. And I believe Axiom has paid a substantial amount of money, over 100 million, for a Gravitics module. It's a metal module and probably using it just for storage. So it wouldn't surprise me if they're in talks with Sierra Space as well. Just to have more vendors that supply them with modules. At the moment, it's just Dells Alenia, and the modules are quite expensive. So we have Don Irving 3806 saying, "Great content, you deserve more views. Thank you very much." And Kako Geneticist says, "Yes, he does. I appreciate the high information density and relative lack of hype, fluff, clickbait, and BS on this channel. Thank you for that." And that's basically because I do the videos I want to watch, and I don't appreciate all the fluff, the jingles, all that kind of stuff. So I don't put them in my videos. So the only stuff I put in my videos, the banners, is just the minimum amount to grow my channel, and that's it. I just, yeah, I don't really like the fluff, so it's not in my videos. So let's get rid of myself for the moment here. And Tim Williams 9100 is saying, "Makes me feel sorry for Bigelow, which has an actual inflatable module on the ISS, but was an early mover for expandable space modules and was 10 years too early. Sierra Space will be the first to have a major inflatable module." Well, I guess we see, and you know, the awards are coming up soon. I think for nearly all the contenders, they do need the NASA money. NASA is the anchor tenant, and without NASA money, they won't survive. I'm not sure how viable commercial space stations are, even with NASA funding, but I'm pretty sure they're not viable without NASA funding. So we'll have to see. I know Starlab has gone the international route. They have a lot of international partnerships. They have you know, Mitsubishi from Japan. They've got Airbus from ESA, and they've got MDA from Canada. So I think they will do well with the other space agencies and maybe private commercial companies because they are global. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't know what's going to happen, and yeah, we'll obviously keep up to date on what's happening with commercial space stations. But let's move on to the second video of this week, and that is on Firefly's Cislunar Supply Hub concept. So I've covered a number of companies working on DARPA's Lunar 10 architecture study. So DARPA came up with the idea, let's assume we have a thriving lunar economy on the moon by 2035, and what steps would we have to take now so that we have that thriving economy 10 years later? So that's what the study was about. I think there's like 12 or 13 companies selected to come up with proposals. I've covered some of those proposals already. Lunar Mast from Honeybee Robotics. I've covered metal foundries on the moon, landing pads, lunar roads, lunar rail, Lockheed Martin. So now I'm covering another proposal that was made by Firefly Aerospace, and that is for Cislunar supply hubs. So this is the cover from their presentation. So let me just have a sip. Here's the cover, and it's logistics and the design of a lunar harbor. So you can think of it as an orbital harbor or a space harbor that's in space, and it basically allows you to separate the the outbound leg of a trip and the inbound leg, you can separate them out and do them at different times. And we have Gabriel Kovacs 1276 saying Hilton partnered with Voyager Space. Yes, I've heard of things like that. I don't know how practical that would be. Maybe it'll give them some advice on the crew area and so on. And but in terms of engineering, I'm not sure how much Hilton knows. And then we have Christian saying, "Why? Yes, I remember they did run Bigelow small module and tested for 2 months, but they did take it off. Why? It did not hold pressure. What was the problem?" Yeah, I don't know with Bigelow. I think they went bankrupt. But you have the people moving to different places. Max Space has Maxime de Jong, who's a guy who built Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 inflatable habitats. So he's the expert on inflatable habitats, and he's now working for Max Space. So that's promising. But on the Cislunar supply hubs, we have a render of how it could look. And basically, initial design would be 4 space tugs connected together. So they'd have solar panels, they'd have communications, they'd have fuel tanks. And it could be as simple as that. And Firefly uses their own space tug as an example. And if you're not familiar with their space tugs, they have their Electra space tug. And they have a number of versions: dawn, dusk, and dark. Some of these are for low Earth orbit. Some can travel through cislunar space. And some are good for like around the moon. And we have a spec sheet. This is their most powerful version, called Electra Dark. Maximum maneuverability. It can handle over 3 tons of payload. Power is over 2.4 kilowatts. Delta V is, it varies from 1 to about 3 kilometers per second, depending on the payload. So it's a pretty substantial space tug, and they reckon you could string a number of those together to start with, and that's your Cislunar hub. So they recommend putting this into a Lagrange point. And Gabriel Kovacs is saying the Bigelow module still on the International Space Station, if I remember correctly. Yes, it's been the Bigelow Exploration Activity Module, and it's been on the space station now for, I think it launched in 2016, so it's been almost 10 years now. So it's only supposed to be there for 2 years, but it's there for 10 years now. And yeah, so the inflatable technology works. It's been verified. It's attached to the International Space Station. So that's proof of concept. So let's bring in the, let's see. Okay, yeah. Let's bring it. This is from their study. So you get an idea of their thinking. So you can see at EM1, that is Earth Moon Lagrange Point 1, which is between Earth and the Moon. You could station a hub. And the reason you'd put it there is station keeping costs are quite low. It's a balance point between Earth and Moon. So if you put something there, it kind of stays there. It may drift off slightly, but station keeping is quite low. So transportation costs are low to this point. So you could aggregate a number of space tugs into a space harbor. So you'd have fuel, you'd have communications, and basically you could provide services from the hub. So that would be, well, you can see from the graphic, they've got like orbit change services, move a satellite to a graveyard orbit, orbital debris. You could top it up with fuel. You could do upgrades, repairs, and so on. And if you're doing a mission to deep space, you can use it for deep space staging. Aggregate your cargo and your fuel at the hub, and then launch into deep space or towards Mars or somewhere, or near Earth asteroid. You could also use it on the way to the moon. Again, you could aggregate. So your inbound traffic, which could be on a heavy launch vehicle like Starship or New Glenn, and then just store it at the hub. And then you could have smaller vehicles moving it from the hub to low Earth orbit or towards the surface of the moon. So the idea is you can split out the journey into separate legs. So that's one of the slides. Let's have another look at a separate slide. So here you can see at the bottom how you gradually build up the hub. One space tug or one component at a time, and it can get large in time. And you'd have what's called unit spacecraft going between the hub and other places, ferrying fuel or cargo to or from the hub. And they suggest maybe upper stages that are heading towards the moon, they do a translunar injection, they push the satellite or the lander towards the moon, and at that point you'd normally passivate the upper stage. But instead of doing that, you could then just send it towards the supply hub. It could dock there, it could be refueled, and now you've got some kind of upper stage that can do other missions. Or it can aggregate its resources, communications, solar panel, edge computing into the hub. So gradually you get more communication bandwidth, you get more power, you get more computing. And Gabriel Kovacs is saying it could be refueled from the moon if it only carries fuels that are manufacturable on the moon. I mean, that's one of the advantages. The L2 is much closer to the moon than it is to Earth. It's about 5/6 of the way towards the moon. I think I have a graphic somewhere. Let's see if I have a graphic. No, those are other things I want to talk about. But at some point, I should have a graphic of the Lagrange points. But basically, it's quite close to the moon. So you could definitely do missions to the moon for propellant. Pick up propellant from the moon, for instance, water. And then once you have water at the hub, you could electrolyze it using the power to liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, which you could then store cryogenically. They do mention, Firefly mentions they're not very keen on cryogenic propellants. They prefer storable propellants. But I do say in the video, we're going to need to store cryogenic propellants in space if we want to expand into the solar system. And the technology is being worked on by Blue Origin and others, and they have passed NASA's tests for storing cryogenic propellant in space. So the technology exists, they just have to demonstrate it in space. So to me, cryogenic propellants is absolutely essential, and I think the hub should store those at some point. So the next slide has their diagram for how to refuel the hub, and at the top here you have what they call refill cartridges. So these are sent on like a Starship, whatever. You have lots of these propellant cartridges with a pressurant, and then the pressurant will just push the fuel, the propellant into the supply hub tanks, and that way you can refuel the supply hub. And they do mention this is a Starship fairing. They can get like 7 of these cartridges in, and that would be 3,000. I think it said 3,000 liters of propellant with 1,000 liters of pressurant, which is just the helium. So the helium is just there to push the propellant into the tanks on the supply hub. So a single Starship launch could launch 3,000 liters of propellant at a time. So that's interesting. So that is their supply hub design. And Marty's saying nuclear propulsion could replace cryofuel for deep space. Yeah, you still have to store like the hydrogen though, right? So I think for at least in a solar system, you'd probably want water as the main fuel, which you could electrolyze into liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen. That is the architecture that Blue Origin is using. I think they got the architecture right. You can mine water from the moon. You can put it into space. You can then electrolyze it into liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen, and that's very efficient for chemical thrusters. The hydrogen can be used for nuclear propulsion. And obviously water is useful as a consumable. So I think water is the key resource for the inner solar system. I do have a diagram of the Lagrange points, but basically it's useful to think of it as kind of a topological map rather than distance. You can see the red spot is Earth, the green spot is Moon, and these crosses are the Lagrange points. And L2 is exactly in line between Earth and the Moon, but slightly in from the Moon. And it's kind of like a plateau. Once you're there, you can pretty much stay there with very little fuel consumption. You're not inside a gravity well, because the two gravity wells from Earth and Moon balance each other out. So it's a great location in terms of station keeping, aggregating fuel and cargo. And it's not difficult to get to the Moon. A little push, a little nudge will send you down the gravity well towards the Moon. So anyway, that is, oh yeah, I have this as well. So we've got a few comments. So we have David Chung saying, what are your thoughts on Tony Bruno joining Blue Origin? Yeah, I was kind of surprised by that news. But obviously ULA and Blue Origin have been partnered together on the engines, the BE4 engines. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know his reasons, but it's very good news for Blue Origin. Blue Origin is really quite impressive right now. You look what they're doing. New Glenn, which is going from heavy to super heavy launch. The Blue Ring, the Space Tug, Orbital Reef, if that happens. You've got two landers, Mark 1, Mark 2. You've got the fuel shuttle, the Cislunar transporter. So they're very, very impressive at the moment. They've got a lot of hardware they're building, and the cryogenic management in space, which is a key piece of technology. And then you've got Blue Alchemist and their lunar resource harvesting technology. So they are very, very impressive at the moment, what they're doing. And Marty is saying L2, not L1. Sorry if I said L1, it's L2. L2. So you have L1, I think, and L2, which are kind of what considered unstable points, but that's actually an advantage. It means it's easy to give a vehicle a nudge and it will go towards the Earth and Moon. Then you have stable points, L4 and L5, which are good for big space stations or big habitats. You could put an L4, L5, but L2 is perfect for a Cislunar supply hub, where you want to go to the Earth, you want to go to the Moon, LEO. So it's a great location. So here is a list of what Firefly considers are critical functions of a supply hub, and that is the endogenous docking. So basically, it's very easy to dock to the supply hub. So either active or passive mode, and you need robotic arms and connections, some kind of robotic arm, which is quite common on space stations. You'd have intermodal containers. So just like at a port, you take containers off a cargo ship and they go directly onto road transport, or you can just stack them at the warehouse. So intermodal. So basically you can take a container from Starship and you could then put it onto some other vehicle, a lunar lander, right? So standardized payload modules. I'm saying L1 is the one between Earth and Moon. It is, I don't want to share the graphic now, so it's the one directly between Earth and Moon, whatever that Lagrange point is. I thought it was L2, but it is whatever it is. It's the one between Earth and Moon in a direct line. So we have orbital refueling. Obviously, that's a key requirement. Probably one of the earliest means of revenue. There's quite a few satellites in space, and they're perfectly good assets, but they just run out of fuel, which means they can't do station keeping. So if you could provide fuel to those satellites, that's easy money. So GPS satellites and telecommunication satellites, and there's many satellites. Autonomous decision making, so it has to be able to make decisions without humans in the loop for safety critical systems. Distributed ledgers to record keep all the transactions. Networking, allow cooperative cooperation for resource sharing, and then modular power. So basically, as the space tugs aggregate, they share their solar power panels, so they share the power. So gradually, the supply hub has more and more power, more and more compute, and more communications. And of course, the fuel tanks are aggregated so it can store more propellant. So that's the idea of their Cislunar supply hub. So let's have a look at the comments. I put myself in the corner. Just give me a second. So we have no show go. Seems odd to put the port in the middle of the route rather than at either end. Make like more like a truck stop than a port. Well, so this is why you have to look at this graphic. What matters in space is not the distances. What matters is gravitational potential. So if you convert that potential into a topographic map, so it's like hills and valleys, think of it as hills and valleys. Valleys, you're in a deep gravity well, and it's very expensive to get out of that well. It requires a lot of energy. You really want to be at the top, on the top of the hill. So Firefly in their report, they call it high ground, and they're talking about delta V. So you can see from this map, the high ground is the yellow area. That is the top of the gravitational potential. You're on the top of the hill, and it's very easy to roll down the hill to various places, either to the Earth or to the Moon. So it's a very good place to be for low transportation costs. And once you're at these points, it's easy to stay there. So your station keeping costs are low. So that's why it's at L2, because it's a balance point. And there's some others, L4, L5, but at, I believe it's L2 or it's L1, whatever. It's the one in between Earth and Moon. That's the best place to be from a gravitational potential point of view. And Robin Miller is saying, on the surface, the proposal appears to have merit. I will have to download the paper and examine it further. So yeah, the report is linked in the description. It's the full lunar field guide. It's 200 pages, but chapter 13 is on the Cislunar supply hub. So I am positive on the need to standardize containers for freight operations in space, a valuable Earth, analog, and barges, tugs, and like for water operations. Time spent observing these vessels and their operations should inform space systems engineering. That's why I included video of like taking cargo from ships and putting them onto trucks, or just leaving them in the port. It's very efficient the way they do things on Earth. It's been optimized, and we should do the same with standard cargo containers. And he said, by the way, you providing links to the sources is the most valuable bits of your postings, and for which I'm grateful. No problem. You can see where I get my source material from, and I generally always link to it in every video. So sure, check out the sources. And Marty's saying, a refueling hub would also give the needed impetus for in-space and lunar fuel extraction. Yeah, it's great for lunar harvesting. You could just harvest it and then transport it to the supply hub. Even better if you can use electromagnetic railgun, which is what Elon Musk is talking about, and shoot it into orbit. And then you don't have to use any fuel. So that would be great. So we have Wingsley saying, it's quite a long comment, but he's basically saying the concept of some kind of orbital station orbiting at Earth Moon Lagrange point. So it is L1. So I was saying L2, it's L1. So EML1, which is 5/6 of the way between Earth and the Moon, are nearby a near rectilinear halo orbit, which orbits EML1 have been talked about for years. It should seem obvious that there are three major concerns. And David is saying, seems like the space tug market is becoming increasingly more crowded. Lots of players now, Impulse, Blue, Firefly, etc. Seems like everyone has one. That's great news. Well, I guess a gas station in space If that Tesla car is still floating there, it would be first consumer. Yeah, there's still the Tesla Roadster somewhere orbiting in space. Who knows where it is? Well, I think some people know where it is. But in terms of space tugs, everyone seems to be working on a space tug, which is good. It's good for in-space operations. Yeah, like you mentioned, David mentioned, there's Firefly, the Electra, Impulse Space, the Mira, and the Helios. There's Blue Origin with their Blue Ring, and yeah, I'm sure there's quite a few others as well. So Wingsley's saying, point one, investing a great deal of money in creating an EML1 station or harbour implies that you're going to do something to create a return on investment, perhaps industrialize the moon. If so, this in turn implies that there is a plan in place, including funding and dedicated personnel and technology ready to move forward. Do we have that plan and everything else ready to carry it out? This would be a long-term commitment. No, we don't have a plan. This was just a study from DARPA. It's like, if we had a thriving economy 10 years from now, what would be the steps needed to get to that? So it was just like a thought experiment. So these are just proposals. They're not funded. But maybe it could be part of Artemis. Who knows? And point two is, can the plan for EML1 station harbour be scalable? If NASA's Lunar Gateway taught us anything, you think they're planning for one size of space station, and then SpaceX's HLS Starship or Blue Origin's Blue Moon come along, and suddenly your station has compatibility problems. So is this new concept designed to grow? Well, I don't know how. Yeah, if I have a look at this one here, so you can see at the bottom, you can see it how it's just scalable. They use hexagonal tiling, and you can just keep adding to the hub, just one space tug at a time. Keep adding to it, and it can grow in size and get very big. So yes, you definitely can scale it easily. So yeah, so that answers that question. And three is, what if something goes wrong? There are many possibilities in space race 2 of what can go wrong. What if China, Russia attempts a security breach, sabotaging the EML1 facility? What if there's a collision with a near-Earth object? What if fuel transfer malfunctions? The bottom line is, how can we design, build, and maintain a station that is secure and reliable? Another issue is, this EML1 station supposed to be solar powered? If so, there would have to be plans made to ensure that the solar panels remain pointed towards the sun and not be eclipsed by either the moon or Earth. Yes, those are good points. In terms of, myself here, in terms of the power, it appears to be solar panels, and each time you add a new space tug, it comes with solar panels, so your power increases over time. In terms of hazards, they do mention about zoning laws with the fuel with the hub, and that you'd put hazardous materials on the outside and so on. So basically, they are thinking about the hazards. I mentioned about radiation levels. You're outside the magnetic field of the Earth, so you have to deal with more radiation. So potentially you could put water on the outside to help mitigate that. So yeah, there's various issues you have to take into account. But yeah, some of those are addressed in the proposal, and some of them that you'd have to think about. Some of them would be challenges for sure. So that is, I think I've covered all the comments for that. In terms of, I thought that someone said in one of the comments, I'm not sure I've included it, about for the space station, could you not spin it? I think someone said about spinning the space station to get spin gravity, and that reminded me of this graphic which I included. So this is vast space. This is in the 2030s, but I think you can find this image on their website. So these modules on the outside are actually Haven 2 modules. So Haven 1 is going up in 2026, and it's a tech demo. Haven 2 is their proposal to NASA. It's a stretched version. It's got more windows. It has 2 docking ports. Basically, you can stack these Haven 2 modules together, and eventually then what you can do is split them apart, and then you launch this central hub, which will be launched on a Starship, and then you configure the Haven 2 modules around the side, and then you can spin the whole thing around. So you get spin gravity in the modules, while the central hub would spin around its own axis, and Starship could dock with it, and so on. So there are proposals for spinning space stations, at least from vast space. This is in the 2030s, but I thought that was interesting. And another point about this is about the inflatable modules and the life habitat modules from Sierra Space. And I don't even remember, there was a contract between NASA and Sierra Space to consider using their inflatable habitats as underground tunnels between habitation modules. So you'd have one habitation module, another, rather than having to do an EVA to go to the next one, you could build a trench between the habitat modules, place the inflatable modules in between with airlocks on either side, and then you'd basically fill in the regolith around the module, the tunnel, and put a regolith on top, so you're protected from radiation. You've got thermal buffering, the temperature would be about the same, and you can easily move between one habitat and the other using the tunnel. And if there was a solar flare, you could be in the tunnel. It's underground, you're protected from solar flares. So I thought that was very interesting to do with the inflatable modules. So I think I prefer Sierra Space working on that than some kind of independent space station, personally. So we have Marty saying, slow spin may work, but a 1G spin would tear it apart. And also, I think everyone would be sick, especially if you've got a small space station, you spin it around. The gravity at your head would not match the gravity in your body and your legs, and I think you would just throw up. I think that would be very disorientating. So unless you make your space station really big, I don't think you can spin it, or you'd have to spin it very, very, very slowly. And Christine is saying 0.8G will do radius 1.2 kilometers and orbit 70 seconds as RP on M plus a little big. So yeah, basically you've got to go big if you want to spin it. It has to be like kilometer size, which you could do with cables under tension. So you have a central hub, and then you have some kind of like a structural truss that goes all the way to the habitat, and so basically a long tunnel to the habitat, which is spinning around at something between 0 and 1G, just to give you some gravity. I think that's the way you have to do it. But yeah, this looks nice, but I don't think it's very practical because it's too small to be very feasible, personally. So that's everything I want to cover. But before I go, I want to do a tier list. So if I just bring that up here and put myself in the corner. So this is just a tier list on the space stations, commercial space stations, and my personal opinion of how good they are. You know, just a personal opinion. So S tier is like the very, very best, and then going down in A, B, C, and D. So Orbital Reef, I'm not a fan of Orbital Reef. I think I made that clear. I don't think Blue Origin is spending any time on this. It's on the back burner. It's a low priority. I've never seen any updates on social media or videos on their progress for years now. All the other ones, I see videos, social media posts. I see partnerships. I see news. I don't hear anything about Orbital Reef, so I'm going to put it down there. MaxSpace is kind of like the wild card. It's just been announced. Definitely looking at the team, you got Maxime de Jong. He's an expert on inflatable modules. So they have a good team. But yeah, in terms of getting an award, I have no clue how likely that is to happen. So I'm going to put them down C. Starship is kind of, yeah, I don't know where to put that. It's a C or a B. They didn't get the Phase 1 award. NASA had quite a few issues with it. And it's really designed to be a spacecraft. It's not designed to be a space station. So I don't really think SpaceX is spending a lot of time in making it into a space station. So I'm going to put it down as C, to be honest. In terms of Starlab, I do like Starlab, so it's an A or a B. So I'm going to put it down here as a B. Oh, sorry, I put it as A because I think they understand they don't want to rely just on NASA, so they want to make it as global as possible. So they've got companies from Europe and Airbus who will be building the primary structure. You've got Mitsubishi from Japan. You've got MDA Space providing the robotic arm from Canada. And you've got lots of partnerships, I think, with Redwire and quite a few other partnerships they've announced. So I'm basically, I like their business approach, which is get a lot of international partners. Therefore, you'll pick up missions from ESA, from JAXA, and maybe private missions from those other companies. And you're not so dependent upon NASA and the US. And we have Marty saying, Blue Origin tend to be secretive. They may come up with something, but we'll not know till it does or doesn't happen. Yeah, I mean, the more companies working on space stations, the better. But I don't really have a lot of visibility. But who knows? Maybe they will surprise us with some news, which would be great. And then we have Axiom Space, which honestly, it's a B or C, to be honest. I think I'll put it as a B. So I think they've almost fabricated their first module from Thales Alenia. It had its final weld. But they spent a lot of money on these modules. They're expensive. It's taking some time, and they do have money problems. We know for sure they have money problems because they had a lot of people to begin with, and so they need to win an award from NASA basically. Otherwise, I'm not sure Axiom Station will happen. So I do like the life habitat from this is aerospace. The life habitat, they have various sizes going up to 5,000 cubic meters. So I put the 500 one in here. But I think I prefer it more for moon habitats, tunnels on the moon. I don't think they have a lot of money to put to work on commercial space stations. So maybe part as orbital reef, who knows? And then we have vast space, which I am quite keen on. So Haven 1 is fully funded by the company. Basically the CEO's got a lot of money from crypto, and he's fully funding all the development and construction and launch of Haven 1, which is great. Haven 2, which is the larger version, would need NASA funding. So this will be the very first commercial space station module to launch, hopefully in 2026. It's built, it's being verified, it's being tested. Fingers crossed it launches successfully in 2026. So that's my opinion on the commercial space stations and where they're at the moment. And maybe we'll get some surprise announcements, because anyone is welcome to put proposals for phase 2. NASA's made that clear. So we'll see how that goes. In terms of videos I'm doing next week, I think I'm going to be talking about radiation a lot next week. So there's a startup that I want to cover that's working on radiation, RTGs. So that will be the first video this week. And then I want to talk about NASA and radiation. So in the past, NASA's view of radiation didn't really matter that much because we're just sending people to space station. Now we're going further to the moon and spending maybe a week on the surface of the moon and then crewed missions to Mars. NASA's view and handling of radiation is going to be a problem. It's going to be a big problem for crewed missions, especially to Mars. So I have some opinions on that. So that will be my second video this week, probably out Friday. So please watch that, and please like and subscribe and all the rest. And I will see you next week. Thank you for watching.